Live from the Reed Conference Center in Midwest City, home of Tinker Air Force Base, this is the 2024 Tinker State of the Base.
I am John Stock, the Tinker Air Force Base Installation Chief of Public Affairs, and I have the privilege of being your moderator for today's 2024 State of the Base. This is the first time we have had this engagement in a formal way, so thank you for being part of it. Please stand for the presentation of colors by the Tinker Air Force Base Honor Guard and the singing of our national anthem by Staff Sergeant Timothy Orr.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does the star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Chaplain Major Felix Jones, please come forward to offer the invocation.
Please share with me in a word of prayer. In these moments, O Lord, lead us to know the responsibility that is ours as leaders and workers on this base. By word, example, and devotion to duty, let us become involved in the answer to the problems that confront us. Grant us strength to perform our task satisfactorily and a strong faith in you that will enable us to keep life's priorities in order. We are grateful for those who are here who help inspire us, for those with courage enough to lead us, and for those with the wisdom enough to challenge us. But above all, for those with the backbone enough to be themselves with us. We pray this in your name, this prayer. Amen.
Please be seated. Thank you to our Honor Guard, Chaplain Jones and Sergeant Orr. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to recognize Midwest City Chamber of Commerce and the City of Midwest City for sponsoring this event and assisting us to make this happen. Let's give them all a round of applause. Tinker Air Force Base is surrounded by supportive local communities, all critical of our success as we provide combat power for America. We are honored to have legislators, civic leaders, elected officials, educators, industry experts, and other community partners, as well as our own military and civilians that have joined us today. This is our inaugural State of the Base open to our community leaders. The intent of today's event is to provide you with the latest updates on Tinker Air Force Base. You will hear from key mission partners who introduce themselves and answer a few questions about their unit. I will now introduce our panel. Please hold the applause until the end. On the panel, we have our host, Colonel Abby Rosetta, Commander, Tinker Installation and 72nd Air Base Wing. Brigadier General Brian Moore, Commander, Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex. Mr. Stephen Gray, Director, 448th Supply Chain Management Wing. Mr. John Sneeden, Program Executive Officer for Propulsion, Air Force Life Cycle Management Center. Colonel Ken Voigt, Commander, 552nd Air Control Wing. Captain Britt Windler, Commander, Strategic Communications Wing 1. Colonel Matthew Gormley, Commander, 507th Air Refueling Wing. And Colonel Shelby Dreyer, Commander, 137th Special Operations Wing. This event will be a town hall format with each leader introducing themselves and their organization. I would ask each leader 2 questions, one at a time, and then if time permits, we will open the floor to you for your questions. At this time, we would like to welcome Colonel Rosetta to provide opening remarks.
Thanks, Tom. All right, good afternoon. It is truly an honor to stand before you today for our inaugural State of the Base. And so whether you're in person at Reed or you're listening on Facebook Live, really appreciate you because your presence speaks volumes about how important this mission is and how incredibly important our community is. So as General Kirkland always says, right, the best communities make the best bases. So thanks for being here. It means a lot. Hey, today's gathering provides us an invaluable opportunity to hear from us. This is the first time the 8 of us have been on stage together, and I just need to give a huge shout out to the commanders at the table right now. These folks had to cancel plans. They had to change flights. They made a lot of compromises and concessions to be here today. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you. I really, really appreciate it. It's an honor to serve. Yeah. It is an honor to serve with these fantastic leaders, and it's an honor to call them my wingman. So again, appreciate you. So I encourage you to please actively participate, okay? Ask us your questions. John's gonna ask us some questions we're gonna answer, but we wanna hear from you. We wanna make sure that we're communicating what's important to us. So I really look forward to today, and thank you so much to the PA team for making today happen.
Thank you, Colonel Rosetta. Ma'am, grab the mic, and would you please kick off our panel? Take a moment to talk a little about yourself, as well as the role that you have, and a little bit about the 72nd Air Base Wing.
Is my mic on? Yes, okay. All right, thanks, John. So I'm Abby Rosetta. I'm a Corps Aircraft Maintenance Officer. I graduated from the Air Force Academy in 1997, which was about 1 million centuries ago. I've lived all over the world, predominantly 10 different maintenance assignments. I am married. My husband just recently retired from the Air Force, so he is a recovering Air Force officer. We have 2 small boys. I have had the great honor and pleasure to be stationed at Tinker since 2018, which is pretty unusual. I'm on my 4th job at Tinker. I truly feel like it's home. And I am just so honored to stand here or sit here before you today, and I just so appreciate everyone being here today. Okay, 72nd Air Base Wing. I am dual-hatted. I am the wing commander for the 72nd Air Base Wing. I am also the installation commander. My battle buddy is Chief Sipos. We are the command team for both the Air Base Wing and the installation. As such, in the Air Base Wing, we have the medical group, which takes care of medical readiness. We have the Mission Support Group, which takes care of all the defenders, the safety, the security, and all the family support services and logistics readiness. We also have a Civil Engineering Directorate, which takes care of all the civil engineering things like roads and power and buildings and infrastructure. We also have the Comm Directorate, which takes care of all of our classified and unclassified computer networks on base. We also have the airfield, and all the pay goes through our wing and all that great stuff. As the installation, we support all of their missions. My number one job is to enable and ensure these fine warfighters can execute their wartime mission in any given day. So it's pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting to support those warfighters. Yep.
As the installation commander, would you tell us more about your strategic vision and line of efforts as you move forward in 2024 with the 72nd Air Base Wing's year of competition?
Yes, so I would say right now we live in an incredible time of consequence. When you think about what's happening in the international space, we have conflict in multiple areas of operation, we have competition, we are really focused on deterrence. And so when I took command in July, I sat down with the team and I said, hey, what are our priorities in the wing? And our wing priorities must align to General Hawkins Air Force Sustainment Center priorities, and they must align to Air Force Material Command's priorities, and they must align to our Air Force priorities. And so we have done that. We've nested and aligned our strategic priorities to ensure that we're well in step with our senior leaders. So our first priority in the wing is, like I said, is to execute Team Tinker's missions, right? So that means we're ensuring our warfighters have what they need when they need to go, whether that's defenders at the gate, making sure they can come to work every day, whether that's the airfield working open and operational, whether it's the communications and all the comm wires and beeps and squeaks are going so Mr. Gray's team can order parts. That is our number one mission, our number one priority. Our number two priority is to strengthen and empower our airmen and their families. So this is the airman piece, right? We need to recruit a very diverse, talented workforce. We do that for our wing, we do that for the installation. And then we need to train them. And then we need to retain them. So we're really focused on that, and we need to empower them because our airmen are amazing. And when I say airmen, I mean the folks that wear a uniform to work and the folks who wear civilian clothes to work. That's a big capital A airmen when I talk about that. Our third priority is to revolutionize our processes. And so across the Air Force Sustainment Center, Art of the Possible is our mission culture. And it's how we go about attacking problems or getting after solutions. And so it's a theory of constraints management system with a leadership model on top of it. So what I say is we take a whole group of folks that maybe have a unity, we all are unified in our effort to get after one common goal, and we figure out how to knock out the constraints so our team can go do magic. And then our last priority is the posture to win. And the posture to win priority is really getting after this, what does our future look like, and how do we ensure our airmen are ready? So if we say, hey, our airmen in uniform need to be ready to deploy, and our civilians in civilian clothes need to be ready to stay behind and secure the base and make sure our missions go. We need to ensure our warfighters still can do our mission with our civilians and our militaries and our contractor workforce. And so that posture to win priority has driven us to declare 2024 the year of competition, because iron sharpens iron, right? And so in the year of competition for the 72nd Air Base Wing for the Wildcatters is to continue to focus on what does it take to win? Because we are in a competition. We are absolutely in a competition for the world order that we want to live in today. And so we talk about a warrior ethos, we talk about mission command culture, and we talk about what does it take to be ready to win. So really excited. It is absolutely fantastic. The team has gotten behind our priorities, and we talk about what are we doing to take care of our airmen and execute our mission every single day. So thanks.
Thank you, Colonel Rossetto. Now we will hear from Brigadier General Moore. Sir, would you provide some background on yourself as well as the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex?
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Let me just start by saying I love that last value or priority that Colonel Rossetto has. What does winning look like? I think winning looks like the team up here working together, a great installation host bringing us all together. This is fantastic. Thank you for doing this, Mr. Stock. This is incredible, and to do it like first inaugural, that is huge, and I think this messaging and this conversation we're about to have really resonates. So I'm Brian Moore, I represent the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex, 9,000 folks, mostly Oklahoman, 9,000 Oklahomans, and about 100 military. A lot of people don't know that this organization, the largest single site employer in Oklahoma, is run by the backbone of the Air Force, the civilian airmen that keep sustainment and the fight going. It's amazing capability that we have. The capability and capacity that we have here because of your efforts to keep us successful really does amount to the defense industrial base backbone to win the competition, as Colonel Rosetta said now, with the peer competitor, People's Republic of China, and the fight, whatever fight comes in the future, right? So the industrial base is made up of 3 different depots, of which we're one. The Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex, we focus on bombers, tankers, C2ISR. 2 of our customers are at the table with us, Colonel Voigt on the E3 America's Wing, and Captain Windler on the E6 Stratcom Wing 1. We support them, just like Colonel Rosetta said. They are our customers. We sustain their fight for the future and their competition now. That's what we do. If you think back about World War II, we were maintenance, repair, overhaul, right? That turned into production of bombers, right? Manufacturing of bombers. Think of us this way. We are 99% maintenance, repair, overhaul at this complex. We are the largest MRO facility in the Department of Defense. We think on the planet, probably still trying to prove that a little bit, but probably pretty close. We have 8.4 million square feet of industrial capacity, and we have the ability to sustain the oldest old and the newest new. We need to continue as a team, the collective team here, to bring in manufacturing, just like they did back in World War II, to be successful for the next fight. And so we're thinking about producing to promise now and how we prepare for competition and win, as Colonel Rosetta said. Great segue into that. So thank you for that introduction.
Thank you, sir. And your first question here, it's actually 2 parts. As an air logistics complex commander, how do you interpret the concept of integrated deterrence within the context of great power competition? And how are you applying this concept to ensure success in immediate operations while strategically preparing for future challenges?
Okay, I'm going to simplify that. That is a lot all at once. So the question is, why integration? Who integrates and to do what, right? You heard Colonel Rosetta also talk about deterrence. This is about great power competition to address a peer competitor in the People's Republic of China now. I would suggest to you, and our secretary would suggest, that the priority is the People's Republic of China, and the threat is different than it's been in decades past. It's peer competition, right? And we need to prepare for that. So how do we do that? General Richardson, our Air Force Materiel Command commander, would tell you integrated capability delivery under materiel command and sustainment, which is what this base does. It's a sustainment base that supports warfighters, right? We got to integrate to do that. The gaps and seams of integration are where we need to focus. For us, it's integrating across 3 air logistics complexes with our great partners out in Hill, in Ogden, that depot, and then in Middle Georgia at Warner Robins, that depot. We serve as one function. Our boss, General Hawkins, likes to say if one depot sneezes, the other one catches a cold. It is true in the sense of we depend on them and they depend on us. That integration is what keeps some of these oldest old aircraft, think B-52s, that have been flying since the 60s, right? They're going to fly until 2050s-ish, right? And they're going to undergo one of the biggest mods the Air Force has seen to keep them viable and capable. You can only do that with great integration with our sustainment partners. The folks you see here, they'll talk more to their sustainment activities. We depend on them. We are a team. And then let me just kind of wrap it up a little bit. as Colonel Rosetta said, best communities make the best bases. This integration extends to the communities of the base. So, Senator Stanley, I see you sitting here. Legislators, both federal and state, have so much impact in our ability to be successful and be able to bring in the next capabilities to win the next fight. Mayors, the communities, there's a lot of mayors here today. You take care of our folks, right? You provide the quality of life that our folks need to be able to focus on mission and take care of business. Our industry partners, public-private partnerships are growing, and they need to be for industry's sake. Again, think World War II. This is about being able to spin up the defense industrial base should the next fight kick off. We, the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex, provide that foundation that's sizable to be able to scale up in time of war. And that's not an insignificant requirement. World War I, from 200,000 people to 4 million people in a year, right? World War II, from 300,000, you can check my math, to about 1 million in the first year, right? So what would be asked of us? We would need all community leaders' help. We would need legislator support. We would need industry. And then I purposefully left this one to the end because it's really, really important. Academia and the partnerships we have with academia. So in one case, for example, OADI, Oklahoma Aerospace Defense Innovation Initiative, we've got memberships here. Really important to be able to bring in the new emerging technologies, to be able to then bring in advanced manufacturing and be able to produce to the warfighter's requirement moving forward, which is how we're thinking. So this integrated deterrence is all of that and more. How do we, as a collective whole, work together to make sure we're going to be able to rise, meet the training requirements now to be able to support the warfighters, and then be able to scale up and scope up when needed should the worst occur and the risk is rising on that. So thanks for that question.
Thank you, General Moore. Next, Mr. Gray will discuss the 448th Supply Chain Management Wing. Please, sir, take a moment, introduce yourself as well as the 448.
All right, thank you. This is a great event because I not only get to talk a little bit about what we do in the supply chain, but I get to kind of in live and up front demonstrate how closely tied all these things are. What General Moore said about a community and integrated deterrence exists across all of our mission sets. None of us are completely an owner of everything we need. We're all dependent on each other in some way, shape, or form. So when I talk about the 448th, I'll go a little bit on that. But to introduce you to me, I've been doing something in the Air Force in some way, shape, or form for about 43 years now. My first job when I came in was I used to drive parts out to flight lines and deliver them to mechanics. I was a pickup and delivery driver. So if you talk to young people, tell them it doesn't matter where you start, you never know where you're going to end up, right? Now I run the Air Force supply chain for complex aircraft parts. I worked enlisted for 10 years. I was an officer for 13. I did some work as a defense contractor. Now I'm a civil servant. I think I've covered just about everything except presidential appointee. I don't think that's going to happen. But I've loved it. I came into the military as a know-it-all punk kid from Miami, Florida, and I like to say the Air Force changed my life for the better. So I'm going to stick around as long as they'll have me. Okay, so that's me, married, and I've got 3 children. They're all out doing their thing professionally, on their own, paying their own bills. I'm very happy about that. Thank you. You can applaud if you want. Right? Thank you. Yeah, that's cool. Right? So let's talk about supply chain management, the 448th. Again, I mentioned complex aircraft parts. That's our business. Where do they come from? As General Moore mentioned, we're flying aircraft that were built about the time I was born. B-52s, 135s, F-15s, F-16s, A-10s, these are all old platforms. There isn't a lot of inventory left for them. The parts that we have in our inventory is about it. I mean, we're now finding that we have to go out to industry and remanufacture or create these parts again, but for years we've just lived off the material that we had. That's very important to understand because there's a fixed amount of this stuff on the planet. There is no place to go get. You can challenge me if you want. I hear this a lot from people. Oh, you need to be more like Amazon. Pick up your phone and look up B-52 electronic warfare on Amazon. See how many results you get. It ain't out there, folks. So we repair the majority of the items that I provide to our bases or to our depots, and a lot of those parts come right from our air logistics complexes. So I'm fortunate in that in the wing, I've got people at all three of our industrial sites, Hill, Tinker, and Robbins, and I got a contingent of folks up at Wright-Patt. And we work hand in hand with our ALCs to keep this inventory going so that we have the spare parts to repair the planes that our guys are flying. And we take leadership from our program offices like Mr. Sneeden in the propulsion area and help kind of guide us as to what are the new things coming in, what's the predictive side of it, how many parts are we going to need, what's changing on the platforms. So it's all connected, all integrated. And I find that I can't do my job without these guys, very much like they can't do their jobs without us. As far as supply goes, I'll just close with this. We like to think and say that aircraft are really just thousands of parts flying in close formation, right? So you can't get anywhere without the material you need, and it is becoming increasingly important these days. When we look ahead at the potential of having to either go into a conflict or what I like to say, scare them up front and deter it so we never have to go into a conflict. It's a very different environment that we're in now, and it's going to require a lot more material. So safe to say supply is a booming business these days. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Gray. At this time, we'll turn the microphone over to Mr. Sneeden. Sir, if you would take a moment for your background as well as your command.
Absolutely. So it's a pleasure to be here with you all. So I'm one of those people that got out of meetings because of this. So thank you for that. You really saved me. But all kidding aside, it's actually great to be here with what I think is a key partner. And it does, and it's been said multiple times already, but it actually takes a community to drive an Air Force. And it's part of the outside community, it's part of their internal partners, it's academia, it's industry, it's Air Force, it's warfighters, it's all of us. So to be a part of this team is humbling. So thank you for this opportunity. So a little about me. I'm from here. I grew up in Oklahoma. And so I'm a very proud Oklahoman. In fact, I grew up in Del City, and I was born at Midwest City Hospital just down the street. And so for me to be able to come back at this stage of my career into this specific position, which was my first as a member of the Senior Executive Service, was an absolute blessing. Both of my kids still live here, and so it's wonderful. And they're out on their own, too. You guys can stand and applaud on that, too. But I love this state, and I love being part of this community. My background from Air Force perspective, been doing this for about 25 years, and I've always been on the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center side of things, which is code for saying kind of more on the weapon system management side. So I've worked in ICBMs or intercontinental ballistic missiles. I've done trainer systems. I've done fighters. I've done propulsion. I've even worked up on air staff out in D.C. And but of all my assignments, of which this will be my third, I think, out here at Oklahoma City, being a member of the propulsion community has been my favorite. So very blessed to be here, and very, very pleased to be leading the propulsion community. So a little about propulsion. So I trust everybody in here has been on an airplane. Okay, and so the engines are pretty important, right? So and it's one of those things that you love to have, and you don't think too much about it till they're not there. Well, our focus is making sure that propulsion is ready, affordable, safe, and effective for all of our warfighter partners. We support all 10 MAJCOMs. We have managed about 40 propulsion systems and for 10 MAJCOMs and over 50 international partners. And when you think about the spectrum of activity that we cover, it goes from engines that were produced in the 1950s and 1960s to cutting edge technology that will power the next generation of air dominance, power our next generation fighter systems. So absolutely doing some amazing things across the spectrum. And again, in close concert with all the partners that are up here, it takes a community to get us there. So very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Okay. You're all familiar with the aircraft Colonel Voigt's team flies. Sir, tell us about America's Wing and some background on yourself, and then I'll ask you your question after that.
Thanks, John. Abby, thanks for doing this. This is amazing. So I am Colonel Ken Voigt. I am blessed to be America's Wing Commander. It is awesome. I am originally from Long Island, New York, so I'm a New York expat. But this is my third round in Oklahoma City, so I consider this more my home than I do New York. I am married to a wonderful woman that puts up with a lot of my BS. She is a loggy by trade, so she makes sure that I understand everything that this side of the table says as a career operator. And I have two outstanding daughters that are still in the home and not branching out yet, but they are 11 and 15, so I guess we can excuse that. So I have the privilege of being the 552 Air Control Wing Commander. I have 4 groups under my command. 3 of them are ops groups, 1 of them is a maintenance group. One of my ops groups deals with employing the E3 in any combat situation available. Another ops group deals with deploying the Control and Reporting Center, which is the ground base of our Battle Management and Command and Control system, and they will deploy anywhere on the globe. I have one ops group that is in charge of training all the operators to make sure they're able to do their job. And then we have a maintenance group that puts up with 3 ops groups who make sure that all the iron is where it needs to be and when it needs to be there. Like I said, our wing at any given day is in 5 different combatant commands. I have airmen across the globe right now. When you watch on the news, the actions of an Air Force taking out the drone attack from Iran into Israel, and the American pilots that were able to do that, that was airmen from the 552 that were doing all the air domain awareness and all the battle management command and control to make that happen. Those are airmen from our air control group that are deployed and been deployed ever since Iraqi freedom started. When you look at what's going on in Europe, I have airmen deployed to their air operations center that are watching and making sure that air domain awareness is happening inside of Europe. And then we go out to the Pacific whenever we are called upon to show a presence and show that we can get there whenever we need to so that we can compete against China. And China knows that we are a good competitor and we will always be there. And every day we have the watch with NORAD Northcom, and we are here sitting alert to make sure that nothing happens in the homeland. And every once in a while we go down to Southcom to help them out with certain missions here and there. So the members of the 552, the airmen that you get to see on a daily basis, are globally deployed on a daily basis. And that is thanks to the fact that everyone on this side of the panel is able to get our 50-year-old aircraft out the door. We're able to use the airfields here, and we're able to have the supplies we need to make it happen. So it is the teamwork here that makes the dream work. There's 3,800 people inside the 552 across 4 different states, but a majority of them are here in Oklahoma making it all happen.
Great, Colonel Voigt. And your question here, can you talk about the E3 fleet reduction and how we're managing the Air Moving Target Indicator, otherwise known as the AMTI gap?
Thanks for the tough question, John. So the E3 fleet has reduced. We went from a fleet around the globe for U.S. E3s. We went from a fleet of 31. Currently, we are a fleet of 18, and by the end of this fiscal year, we'll be a fleet of 16. That was a reduction that had to happen. As we talk about the aging aircraft, we talk about diminishing supply chain, we talk about what it takes to actually keep an aircraft as sophisticated as the E3 airborne. If you don't have the parts, you don't have the propulsion, you don't have a fleet. So we had to make the strategic decision across the Air Force to reduce the fleet in order to be able to sustain that fleet until the next version of airborne early warning is available for the Air Force. That does mean there's less airborne sensors out there. So what are we doing? Well, one, I have to remind everyone, we have two portions of our mobile command and control. We have the airborne side and we have the ground-based side. Both are inside the 552. We are modernizing both sides. So as we look at the E3 fleet and how long we could sustain the fleet until we get the next airborne early warning platform, we're also looking at the ground-based side and seeing how can we modernize that sensor. The TPC-75, which is the name for the radar we use on the ground, has been around since the 70s, just about as long as the E3 has been around. Next fiscal year, our wing will see the first two new radars delivered. They'll go to Idaho and to Hill, or my two combat ground units, and they'll be the first of many radars that get delivered, where we'll be able to have finally a next generation sensor for our units to use. And we're also looking at how do we now use that ground-based unit, instead of being a unit that takes 23 C-17s to move around the planet, which is significant, it's basically almost all of it, to now how do I move them with just 1 to 2 C-130s? And that's what we've been working on in the wing, is how do I get lighter, how do I get more maneuverable, and then how do I have better sensors on the ground to help us cover the ANTI gap. Some of you might be asking, why is it important to cover the air moving target indication gap? So air moving target indication is fancy words in the Air Force for saying we're tracking aircraft. Anything that moves in the air, that's how we track it. That is another word of saying, how do we have air domain awareness, meaning what's flying in the sky? For the United States Air Force, and even before that, so when Patton was going up Italy's boot, he had SCR-1. That stood for our radar number 1 inside the military, and it was our ground-based radar that went up the Italian peninsula with Patton to give him air domain awareness, so airborne early warning, so he knew exactly what the Germans were flying. We have done this ever since before there was an Air Force. In Korea, the units that I have in the air control group were deployed to Korea to provide the same aspect. In Vietnam, the ground-based units were there. We also included the EC-121, which if you come on America's campus, you'll see a static display. Those aircraft went from the transition of just providing airborne early warning to also providing weapons control and giving vectors to our interceptors. That is what we used in NORAD Northcom, is what we used in Vietnam, and then you go to Desert Storm when the E3 showcased itself, and it showed what you can do as a battle management platform, and how if you put a bunch of human beings on the back of an aircraft that has a lot of sensors and comm, they can make some real-time decisions that will defeat the adversary faster than the adversary can make a decision. And we've been doing that method ever since really we've been around as an Air Force. So it's very important for us that we have air domain awareness and that we have battle managers that have the sensors there to make the decisions that they're required to make. That gap we're trying to cover now with make sure we extend the E3 as long as possible until the next airborne early warning system's available, and then make sure the ground system's able to compete as well.
Thank you, Colonel Voigt. Now we will welcome our Navy partner, Captain Windler, for his opening comments. Please, sir, tell us a little bit about yourself and the Navy.
All right. Hey, thanks, John. First of all, Abby, big thanks. Always appreciate being included and invited as your token Navy wing commander here at Tinker. Again, Captain Britt Windler. I've been in the Navy 24 years, been on and off here at Tinker Air Force Base since 2001. With the Navy, with the type of platform that you fly, they tend to keep you with that. This is the only place that we fly the E6 aircraft. So I've been fortunate to be here on and off since then. But I have had the chance to do other things in the Navy. I was underway on an aircraft carrier, a ship's company for 2 years. Gave me a new appreciation for life on an Air Force base. So that was great, but it's good to be here. Live down in Norman now, 2 boys and a wife down there. John, I guess I'll open it to the first question because I think that leads into the mission piece.
Why is there a Navy presence on Tinker?
Great question. I get that often at the supermarket, at Lowe's, wherever I'm at. Okay, so Tinker hosts the Navy's Strategic Communications Wing 1. So we're a Navy wing. We execute the TACAMO mission, which stands for Take, Charge, and Move Out. It is what it is. I didn't come up with it. But the TACAMO mission, SCW-1, we are 1,700 active duty Navy sailors and support personnel here at Tinker. So you have a pretty big Navy contingent here at Tinker, whether you knew it or not. We have 3 squadrons, several units. We fly 16 E-6B aircraft, which is a specially modified 707, so similar airframe to Ken's aircraft. His is the one that's got the dome on top. Mine's the one that's all white and doesn't have a dome. We do have a 5-mile-long wire antenna we trail out the back that can transmit very low frequency. We have a special mission on the E6 to communicate with all legs of the nuclear triad. So what we do is we ensure that the president and other senior leaders can always communicate with bombers, intercontinental ballistic missiles, or submarines. We do that with the special comms capabilities on the E6, one of which is that 5-mile-long antenna. I can send very low frequency radio waves thousands of miles. Again, the intent is to ensure that the president can always control nuclear forces. So if you think about our adversaries' calculus, when they consider the risk or the cost of attacking us, what we do is we make that cost too high because we ensure that the president can always respond to any inbound full-on strike against us. So the Navy has been proud to call Tinker home since 1992. We came here from Maryland and from Hawaii, consolidated in Oklahoma. We have a fantastic relationship with the 72nd Air Base Wing, just care and feeding, housing of our sailors and our aircraft. Air Logistics Complex takes care of our depot needs for that. Many Navy sailors end up surprised that they've received orders to Oklahoma. It's maybe not what they joined the Navy for, but I can tell you from personal experience and from a lot of my friends that I work with, most of those sailors end up spending most, if not all, of their careers here, ended up staying here at the end of the service, and are proud to call Oklahoma home. Thank you.
Yes, sir. It is time to hear from our Air Force Reserve partners. Colonel Gormley, please tell us about yourself and the 507th.
First off, thank you for answering that Navy question. The rest of us are wondering the same thing, what you guys were doing here. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Colonel Matthew Gormley. I am the 507th Air Refueling Wing Commander. And I'm going to say the same thing to Colonel Rosetta and John and the rest of your staff. Putting this type of event on is critical. I'm constantly messaging to my folks in the wing, get out and engage with the community. It is critical, vital for us to succeed to have these types of discussions. So this is perfectly timed. Thank you again for inviting every one of us. Again, Matthew Gormley, 507th Air Refueling Wing Commander. What sets us apart? We're the reserve. I'm a reservist. What does that mean? It means I am a part-time military member. So I'm still in the military. I still got my wife. It's got my 3 children. We have a 17, a 12, and a little COVID surprise that's 2. It wasn't supposed to be funny. Just this reality for me. We live here in Edmond, but I'm a part-timer, so I'm on orders right now, full-time. Home for us is in Wichita. I grew up overseas in Vienna, Austria. Spent some time also in East Tennessee. My dad's a nuclear physicist, so we went from Vienna to East Tennessee a lot. Joined the Air Force. I'm a 1999 grad from the Academy. 2 years younger than the old one at the end of the table, just for the record. That's Colonel Rosetta I'm pointing at. So that's a little about me, but the being a reservist is one of those things that I didn't know existed. So I was 10 years active duty and then joined the reserves. We have about 1,300 members in our wing, and most of those reside here in the Oklahoma City area. That's me in a nutshell.
Thank you, sir. Your question here, though, could you just tell us a little bit more? What is the key differences between our civilian and active duty organizations on Tinker and the 507th? How do you differ?
That kind of goes right along the same lines that I was just discussing. So reservists are part-timers, and I've got, again, 1,300 folks in my wing, so about 75% of those are what we call traditional reservists. They have civilian jobs. I have a civilian job. I'm an airline pilot. I fly for that big airline that's down at DFW. You probably all flown them, or the airline, good and bad experiences I know across the board. But I do that in my civilian world, and then I put this uniform on to give back. The 75% of those reservists, they're your neighbors, and they're here to stay. In active duty, I moved about every 2 to 3, 4 years. The reservists are here. They're staying in this local area, so they are their children go to school with you. They shop at the same stores. They own businesses. We have electricians that own an electrician business right down the street. We have all kinds of folks in our wing that on their civilian job, they're really incorporated into the local area. However, on the military job, they're here for 1 weekend a month for the most part and 2 weeks a year. And then 25% of my wing are the full-timers, the ones that just make sure that the wing is on track. So when the part-timers show up, everything's good to go for them. But perhaps take this patch out. Normally, I'm in a flight suit, by the way. And we got all spiffied up for you guys. Hope that worked. But the flight suit, so we have the American flag on the left shoulder, and I wear this with pride on the right shoulder. I know you can't see it. I apologize. Wish we had a bigger one that we could pass around. But I'll describe it for you. It has a 135, which we'll talk about here shortly, and then KC-135, which is a tanker, and then it says SH for Sooner Home. But on the bottom, it says Okies. Okies. We are your Okies. We are the Okies. And we're proud of that. Yeah. Thanks. So what do the Okies do? We fly tankers, KC-135. The K means tanker, C means cargo. So KC-135. That's our mission. How do tankers work? I'll just explain this real quick. It's hard to talk with your hands. Any good pilot has to be able to talk with their hands. So what you do is here's the tanker, and here's the receiver. All right, so you need 4 things in order to be a good tanker. You need a place to meet with the receiver, you need altitude, you need a heading, and you need a time. If you have those 4 things, we can make it happen. So our job is to be there on time and to provide that fuel. So that receiver comes up, and our boom operator says, okay, pilots, 2 pilots up front, I'm checking off, going to the front, or going to the back. He or she gets on their belly, they're looking out a window, they lower the boom, the receiver comes up very steady, and if they don't come up steady, we back them out. They come up very steady, they connect, and we start passing the fuel. We fuel the fight. That's our job. We have 8 KC-135s here. 2 things we do every day that we focus on, one of which we have an alert mission. So we have an air crew and an aircraft ready to go at any time. So if the nation calls and says we need a tanker whether it's overseas or here at home, we are ready to go. That air crew and that jet is off. Lickety-split, I promise you they're good at it. The second thing we really focus on is there's a nuclear mission. And I pray, and I know all of you do, that we never have to use that. It's a deterrence that we all know that we need. That is something we take very seriously, and that's something that we practice, we study for, because you only get one time to make that right. Thank goodness in my 25-year career, I've not been called to do that. It's been more training, but it's there. And rest assured, we're practicing and studying on a regular basis. Lastly, I'm sure they would all say this too, we need and want your best and brightest. And I can say from the reserve perspective, we want those young folks to join and give back. And as a reservist, I can say, you know what, they can maintain their homes here, but give back and give to the military. So I want you all to know, and I think I can say for everyone here, we're always recruiting, but once an Okie, always an Okie. All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Last but certainly not least, we'll hear from our Air National Guard partner, Colonel Dreyer.
Thank you, John. So just like all the other leaders at this table, just very grateful to be here. And thank you for taking time out of your day and being here and being present and listening to us brag about our units and our squadron and our people, right? Because we're nothing without our airmen and without our civilian partners. So partnership has been the buzzword for today, but I think what makes our partnership so special is the communication and the ability to come here and have these talks. And Abby, thank you for letting us be at this table. So as John mentioned, my name is Shelby Dreyer. I just took command of the 137th Special Operations Wing. We are the Guard unit that's here in Oklahoma City. There are 2 in Oklahoma, which is rare. There's a lot of states out there that do not have that opportunity to have 2 Guard wings. We fly the MC-12, and they fly the F-16, so you've seen a lot of that. As my partner here, a total force partner, talking about the reserves, it kind of clicked in my mind that a lot of people don't know the difference between the reserves and the Guard. And I'll go into that in a little bit. But a little bit about myself. I'm an intelligence officer, have primarily worked intelligence for 19 years in various squadrons, various platforms. Love it, being on the operational side of the Air Force. But then I got an opportunity to switch over to the support side as the Mission Support Group Commander for the 137th, which was amazing. Got to really dig in, really learn about our airmen, and I love those sneaky qualities that they have, those little special talents that we have the opportunity to discover and then allow them to grow. So that was awesome. I do have 4 children. I have a young one too. It wasn't a surprise, it was my husband's idea, but it's undetermined. The other 3 are doing really well. We're just, he's along for the ride, so I'm sure he'll do great things whenever it's his time. But I'm also married to a military member, which can get a little, busy at times. He's also full-time in the Air National Guard, and he just stepped out of command, so I could take command. So we have a good relationship. We kind of bounce back and forth. So a little bit about the 137th. We are one of 2 Air National Guard wings that belong to Special Operations Command, which is really unique. It is a very small command, very tight-knit. We actually get the opportunity to speak with our 3-star, the COM AFSOC, weekly. So we do have a really good relationship. You talk about partnership with our command that is not always present. So we are lucky for that. But that leads to our mission as well. We're a force provider. We organize, train, and equip. So we get our airmen ready. We get them equipped to be able to serve overseas. But for the Guard, this is the difference between the Reserve and the Guard, is that we have 2 bosses. So we answer to the President, right, on the federal side, but we also answer to the Governor. So when you see airmen out working natural disasters, so tornadoes, those type of things that come through and wreck our lives for a period of time, it's typically your Air Guardsmen, your Army Guardsmen that have been activated by our Governor to go support in those operations, which makes us unique. So a little bit more on the unit is that we have continuously been deployed for the past 3+ years. So it's been a little over 3 years. Being special operations, it is different. We have like I said, our relationship is different, but our mission is different as we're supporting those ground forces. So we became a part of AFSOC. 2017 was our first deployment. We've deployed to all areas of the world, all continents, and we have continuously deployed to South America for the past 3 years, which has been a great experience for our airmen. And it's just a little bit different from the typical Guard mission. As far as numbers, we have 1,200 airmen, but again, just like the reserves, we only have, it's a little under 400 is our full-time force. So those other airmen and guardians, we're out in the communities. We work in the communities. We work with our partners, in which that really makes us unique.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll just move on to our next question with you as we come back here. You started to talk about this, but with the uniqueness of the Air National Guard, and especially being one of 2 Guard wings attached to the Air Force Special Operations Command, could you provide the context of how your wing contributes to great power competition?
Absolutely. So that's the big question, right? And we've struggled with that. I say we within Air Force Special Operations Command and SOCOM. And if you've been reading about initiatives and the way forward, and the conversation right now with the money and everything is focused on this global, GPC and how we fit into that. And without getting away from Special Operations identity, right? So where do we fit in that fight? And then as a Guard unit that supports AFSOC, where do we fit? And I would say we're right where we're supposed to be. So we have continued, as I mentioned before, we've continued to deploy, supporting those ground operations. But GPC isn't one fight. There's all kinds of things going on across the globe. And there are special operations that are supporting those efforts. So that's really where we are. We had the opportunity to work with General Slife, who's now at the half level, to where a lot of the things that he worked with us 3 years ago is now coming to fruition. So we hear all the different terminology. If we're going to be deployable combat wings, right? We talk about A staff building up and mission sustainment team or ACE team. So all these different terms, and they change and they're continue to change. And I know my partners up here are also, creating these questions in their mind of like where they fit into this fight. But it doesn't matter what it's called. We're all working together. And I think partnership is the big piece with GPC. We all have to be ready to come to the table and to work through these things, because AFSOC's not the answer. ACC, AMC, we're not the answer by ourselves. So we have to come together. And that's really where that partnership comes to play. And we'll be ready at that time.
Thank you, ma'am. And we're going to continue to rapid fire questions back this way, and I think we'll have enough time for Q&A from the audience afterwards. So, Colonel Gormley, what is the tanker role in the future fight?
So, I guess in the military, when you hear tanker, you think KC-135. There is a newer tanker, it's called a KC-46, with some new capabilities that are amazing. I got to fly that. However, the 135 is it's my bread and butter. That's the workhorse of the Air Force. The newest KC-135 is a 1964 model. The oldest is a 1957, all of which we have out here and we're still flying daily. And the reason, by the way, that we can still fly those daily and that they're so capable is because of the depot. They service our KC-135s here. That's the reason that our aircraft, unlike any other country in the world, have such longevity. It's because of an organization like the depot. Now the tankers. I spent the majority of my career in the Middle East. That's what I knew. That's what I know. I felt more comfortable flying in the Middle East a lot of times than I did back home because I was there so much. But our OSD, so the Office of Secretary of Defense, and our government basically has revectored us. We are now pivoting and have been for a couple of years now. That great power competition, we are vectored right on China as our near peer threat. Going from A to B, we have something there in the middle called the Pacific Ocean. 30% of the world's area is the Pacific Ocean. That's quite a mass. So how do you get there? Tankers. Tankers. That's the bottom line. Anytime you turn the TV on and you see a conflict or an operation, there are tankers in the background. We don't need the credit. We're just sitting back. We're just sitting back, doing our job. Let the fighters take all the credit. And tanker support, there's an old saying, nobody kicks ass without tanker gas. That still applies. And I think the best analogy to provide you with what tankers do, I was over Afghanistan, nighttime, A-10s were our receivers. We have 3 radios. One radio, I'm listening to the troops in contact. So we had ground forces, Americans in the Army on the ground fighting the bad guys. Second radio, I had the A-10s talking to us. And the third one is air traffic control. Most likely it was an E-3, telling us what to do, where to go. I could hear those troops in contact asking for those A-10s to come and put iron down at a certain point. And they initiated something called yo-yo ops, where one comes up while the other one's taking care of business. That one goes up, the other one goes down, takes care of business, and it's a constant. What that tanker provided was the fuel to that fight. And at nighttime, you could see that fight happening. And it allowed those 2 A-10s to stay on station and not just be there for a little more time. They took care of business with that tanker. So the future fight for the 135, I don't see a whole lot changing. In fact, the old adage is the last KC-135 pilot has not been born yet. I sincerely believe that. If our depot keeps going this direction and we're this, it only gets better from here. So I imagine things are going to kind of stay the way they are for the 135. I want to say a quick fun fact. This Saturday, I got to say this, we're having a family day. I would love for each of you to be there. It's almost like an air show, but it's not quite. So we have a lot of jets, your families. I have some flyers. I literally would love for you to come by and be our guest. So I just throw that out there. I'd love to talk to you afterwards. All right, thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Gormley, and we are live on Facebook, so you got a couple invites to hand out. All right, we're moving on to Captain Windler here. Captain Windler, are you working to recapitalize the fleet of aging E-6B aircraft?
Okay, so thank you. Am I on? Okay. Hey, so fancy term. So yes, the E6 is an aging airframe. It's not as aging as some others, but they were bought in the late 80s, early 90s. We didn't buy enough of them, and we have a mission that has the most senior levels of visibility in the DoD and the government. So important mission. Yes, in short, we have a plan. We're going to be replacing the E6 with a special version of the C-130, so big 4-engine prop cargo plane. That's going to be specially outfitted to carry out our mission. That is a funded program of record, so what that means in military parlance is it's going to happen. We're funded to buy 3 starting in 2026, and we're ultimately going to replace all of the E6s through the mid-ish 2030s. So it's an important mission. It continues to be relevant, and the Navy has a plan to keep that going all here at Tinker Air Force Base. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Windler. Colonel Voigt, how is the Air Control Wing adjusting training to meet the pacing challenge?
That's a great question, John. I think I'm the right person to answer it. So it's actually, I love the question on what we're doing for training because it answers the how. A lot of the time in the media or in even the Air Force, we spend a lot of time looking at the what. And what is going to be the battle management command and control platform that goes into the future fight? Well, I'll tell you right now, the horse we're riding into battle is the E3 and the Control and Reporting Center. So we need to worry about how we do it. And the how is really on the backs of all the airmen that you get to see day in and day out in your community. They are awesome. So we need to make sure that we train them properly to be able to compete against a adversary like China, and then if called upon, defeat an adversary like China. So what does that look like? In our wing, we talked about the AMTI gap, but we also use the same acronym in our wing for our priorities, the AMTI, and for us that stands for Airmen, Mission Generation, Training, and Innovation. For our airmen priority, that is, are our airmen resilient? Do they have what they need for the mental, emotional, and physical well-being to keep themselves on the road? We look at our airmen priority, and that is really what our teamwork with Abby's wing to make sure the 72nd can help us take care of our airmen, and then with the Oklahoma community, with partnerships with many outside organizations, whether it be Home Away from Home or anywhere else, that takes care of our airmen so that they're ready to fight. Part of taking care of our airmen also is making sure they're trained and ready to do their business. Mission generation, our second priority, really goes into the first question you asked, John, on how we're closing the AMTI gap, and that is, how do I maximize sorties? How do I make sure that we're able to maximize the sorties today to train, but also have enough sorties up on that platform to sustain the AMTI gap? And that is both for our ground base and our air base. We also needed to look at, how do I maximize our sorties in the simulator? Because it's a simulator where our air crew are able to get the complexity and the density of challenge that they're going to need to move forward. So that gets to our third priority, which is training. When I took command, waiting for me on the desk was a fragmentary order from Air Combat Command that said, "Dear new wing commander, how are you going to fix battle management command and control training across the entire enterprise?" COMAC. So it was my first order that I had coming into command. I had to take that over to the staff, and when I give it to a bunch of lieutenant colonels, majors, captains, and our awesome NCOs in the wing, and I say, hey, with no extra money, with no extra sorties, and no extra time, by the way, you can't stop doing anything because everything we're doing is very important. I need you to change everything about our training, and I need it now. And the funny thing is, they did an awesome job with that. Our wing right now is focusing on, instead of worrying about how are we going to fight in the Central Command, how are we going to fight a pacing challenge? They have revamped all of their training. to make sure that the individuals, whether on the E3 or in the CRC, are able to provide the battle management and command and control for any combatant command. When Matt talked about you needed 4 things for air refueling to happen, 3 of those 4 things happened because the battle manager on board the E3 or the CRC put someone, i.e. the receiver, where it needed to be, put someone, i.e. the tanker, where it needed to be, made sure the timing happened, and made sure they were able to communicate. We do that with tankers, we do that with bombers, we do that with fighters. Anything in the air, we are the ones that, not me anymore, I'm too old. The airmen where I'm training are the ones that make sure that every asset is where they need to be, when they need to be there to provide the effect the combatant commander needs. And when we look at what a pacing challenge looks like in this millennium, it is all about how fast can you turn information. And it's the airmen inside the E3, it's the airmen inside our CRCs that are able to use their sensors, whether they be organic, i.e. with them in their own platform, or non-organic, somewhere else, take all that information and turn it into actionable intelligence so that we can actually turn faster than the adversary. Our training that we're doing in the wing is preparing our airmen to be able to basically change the dynamic and be a highly lethal force. They've done it in the last 11 months. They've changed the entire training program, and it's a program that's not just here at Tinker. It's adopted throughout the entire C2 enterprise. So you'll see it in Georgia, it's in Kadena in Japan, it's over in Alaska. We're making sure that we are all ready. So it's amazing to see what the airmen here are able to do. And I'll go back to, they're able to do it because we are able to execute our first priority, which is taking care of our airmen, which is really on your shoulders, because you are all taking care of our airmen on a daily basis, and I cannot thank you enough for that. The work that you do taking care of our families and taking care of our airmen makes it so we're able to provide the stress and the training so that they're able to go to combat. So thank you for that.
Thank you, sir. Colonel Boyd. Mr. Sneeden, Air Force senior leadership has put significant emphasis on preparing for great power competition. Given that you lead the propulsion enterprise, please offer what your team is doing to support this effort.
Yeah, thanks, John. I'll say that I think the first substantive move was really the Air Forces. And when they restructured, kind of moved towards this reoptimization, and they relooked at the program executive officer structure. And so right now we've got, for the very first time, propulsion is now a program executive officer type of position. And by the way, that's the very first for Tinker Air Force Base too. So I think it's a big feather in our cap to say that propulsion enterprise is centered here in the great state of Oklahoma. And again, I'm very proud to lead that. So when you think about what a PEO does and where a lot of my charge and focus is, instead of taking more of a weapon system by weapon system type approach to propulsion, what we're doing is taking a very horizontal look to propulsion. So how do you optimize your acquisition and sustainment strategies to better, get the readiness that you need, get the affordability that you need, get the outcome that you need? That's where my head's at. And then also, because we're again taking a more of a horizontal look, it's about making sure the industrial base is actually well protected, and that we're actually consolidating for the first time an aggregate propulsion demand signal that is intended to drive the right outcomes for the warfighter for the United States Air Force. So speaking with one propulsion voice versus a lot of disparate ones along the way. So I think that maneuver of kind of getting to a PEO type of organization is a smart maneuver that allows us to better manage the propulsion enterprise. So I think that's kind of thing one. And then when you start talking about getting ready for GPC, broadly, and the foundation that all of this works on, it's the same thing I offered before. It's this is a team of teams type of approach. And it's with our Air Force Sustainment Center partners, it's with our supply chain partners, it's with academia, and by the way, shout out to the University of Oklahoma, so Boomer Sooner for those of you that are here. Okay, great. So, our industry partners, it's all of AFL-CMC, it's our MAJCOMs, it's everybody kind of all pulling together. So that's the foundation that we work on. Where I put a lot of the focus of the propulsion community on is really kind of 3 key areas. One is fielded, the other is fast, and the final one is the future. So when we start talking about the fielded, really what I'm talking about is, are we ready to go to war today? Are we ready to, do we have propulsion readiness that allow us to move at a wartime posture? And many of you know that, the more you fly, the more systems have to come off a wing. We have to overhaul them to make sure that they stay safe, okay? So if we get into a wartime type of environment, how many spares do we really have to be able to support those operations? Are we ready to go into combat today? And we're working the strategic plans to make sure that we are. And there's a lot of focus happening on the mobility platform sides like C-17, on our fighters, and even our trainers to make sure that we can train all the pilots that we need. So that readiness is another fundamental layer. And when we talk about the FAST, really what I'm talking about here is driving innovation in the propulsion enterprise. And when you think about material needs and the complexity of propulsion components, a lot of times it takes 2 to 3 years to get propulsion components, out of our vendors. It's a highly complex field. Well, if all of a sudden you have to surge or you don't get what you need, you can't have a force that's down because of supply chain issues. So when we start talking about innovation and some of our focus areas and how we go faster, it's how do you bring an advanced manufacturing and repair ecosystem to bear that can drive the right outcomes. And we've had some great success with this, with additively producing components that weren't available. And today, inside of F-16 and B-52 propulsion systems, we have additively manufacturing components being flown. We've also worked in partnership with our depot to establish a capability to additively produce components, okay? First of its kind. So again, a lot of focus on trying to get the FAST right. And then the final part for me is the future. A lot of our systems were all developed in the 1950s, 1960s, 70s, some in the 70s and 80s. We have to think about propulsion as a capability. And that capability is not just to get you from point A to point B, but the propulsion system is the thing that actually helps drive your fuel efficiency, which is really important in a Pacific type of a pivot movement. It's the thing that makes sure that you're survivable from a thrust perspective. It's the thing that powers all the avionics systems that are on the inside. So having advanced propulsion capability is hugely important. And my team right now is working through a next generation propulsion system that uses adaptive engine technology. If you've never heard of adaptive engine technology, it's a pretty cool thing. It's basically like having an economy mode and a power mode on your car all at the same time. And we're talking about double-digit fuel savings, double-digit thrust capability beyond anything else that's fielded today. And we're developing that right now. And then for munition systems, thinking about how do we increase producibility? How do we lower cost? How do we drive performance? So, and those propulsion systems that move, that power our munition systems, that we're ready, okay? So again, fielded, future, and fast are all things that are fundamental to me. And now I'll leave you with this thought that this community is absolutely committed to driving the right propulsion outcomes for a warfighter in a GPC environment, and that we love generating that sound of freedom 24/7, 365, and we're going to keep doing it, all with your support. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next, Mr. Gray, how does the 448 Supply Chain Management Wing impact local organic industrial base and defense industrial base with supply chain recovery?
Okay, so a couple of things come to mind when we talk about the industrial base and support. It's really the connective tissue between the Department of Defense and our industry partners. And I would include academia in this as well, because there's some connective tissue there in the same space. I mean, by and large, we go to industry for augmentation, right? We need help. We need additional something, capability, production, manpower, spares, you name it. The other piece is innovation, which we find ourselves more and more in the academic space on as well. When we're trying to change the nature of the way our components work or the way our systems operate, or we're looking for that edge and technology that John's talking about. We go to industry to get that, or through academia to try to bring in the knowledge that other people have that we either need more of or don't have in the government. I mean, years and years and years ago, it was the opposite way, right? A lot of the innovation was coming from the department. Not so much anymore. And I don't want to say that like we're a bunch of like dead-minded people in the department. Don't get me wrong. But what we find is technology evolves very quickly commercially. Innovation is moving much faster. We want to take advantage of that. So from a supply chain perspective, it's the best of both worlds. We have outstanding air logistics complexes that provide production and innovation and technology. And then we have direct linkage to the industrial base and through academia to get the same thing. There are plenty of options out there. And fortunately for us, I guess, in a way, plenty of problems that the department is groping with, right? Trying to figure out how do we solve that problem today? How do we get the next aircraft? How do we get the next engine? How do we get that next thing that we need to be able to execute our mission, keep our people safe, and deter our enemies? So that's really it. And from a financial perspective, it's hundreds of millions of dollars, even billions of dollars, depending on what we're talking about and where we're going. We're fortunate, I think, here at Tinker that we've got such a great community in Oklahoma and so many businesses that are connected to us, right? That connective tissue again, and universities are supporting us. So I feel very fortunate. I've been in a lot of other Air Force bases where we didn't have that for whatever reason, right? We just weren't that close. But here I think we're super fortunate in that we have that bond and the connective tissue between industry and academia. Let me say one thing about aging platforms, and I speak from experience as an aging platform myself. We are modernizing our Air Force, and it's time, right? Time to do that. We've spoken at length about how old some of our platforms are and the fact that we're able to use those for years to come. When you see an aircraft leave Tinker Air Force Base, you know in your mind that that aircraft is about as new as it's ever going to get again. It is ready, mission capable, and lethal to go out and do the work and support the mission that it's charged with. So don't let that doubt creep in your mind that we're at a point where it's a problem. No. The work that's done by our sustainment enterprise and program offices and the entire Air Force base or Air Force to keep the platforms that we have viable is serious business. It's taken very serious, I think, by everybody up here on the panels. And we are good to fight and deter today. We do need to modernize, right? There are other technologies, other capabilities, other ways to do things that we want to bring into the department. But I would not want to go fight the United States Air Force. Wouldn't want to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. General Moore, how does the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex address production challenges related to aging infrastructure, supply limitations, and workforce recruitment?
Okay, great question. I'm gonna divert a little bit. Sometimes you answer the question you want to answer, and then you answer the one given you. So here's what I'm gonna do. First of all, I hope that after listening to all these folks, what you walk away with is that we're better together. And in fact, where I started, integration is kind of fundamental. You know, when we get together, you learn so much. It was just fascinating to listen to our total force partners on the end and the war fighters right there. I didn't even know TACAMO stood for Take Charge and Move Out, so that was an enlightening thing. That was awesome. You know, my wife and I have been married 30 years. We were a part of America's Wing a couple different tours, and we got to come back for a third time to this base. And so awesome to hear Colonel Voigt and his perspective on how things have changed. And then these senior executives sitting to my left, you can tell based on the enterprises that they are running, this is serious business. I mean, Materiel Command is a $73 billion Future 500 equivalent organization. That's massive. And these two folks right here on my left are running the supply chain and the propulsion enterprises for, as Mr. Gray said, the history of the world's best and most lethal Air Force that we've ever seen. So I hope you walk away knowing we're better together. But kind of start answering the question that John asked me. So how do we get after infrastructure, supply, and production challenges, and then workforce? Infrastructure, I will tell you, is about you, right? The infrastructure on this base is incredible. And I know Colonel Rosetta, from her team's perspective, they are making sure that all of it is sustained and moving forward. But you're helping provide it. So for the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex, what some folks might not know, is that we have the ability to expand right on this base. Most other bases do not have that ability, but because of the community and the things that legislators and partners have put in place, the GM plan over by 240 became part of our complex, massive capability. The Burlington Northern Santa Fe Rail Yard became the KC-46 campus, incredible capability. And then more recently, decisions are being made to bring in a bomber campus for the world's most lethal bomber in the B-21 coming our way for organic sustainment right here at this depot. And then in addition to that, we need the advocacy to continue to support the infrastructure we have already in place. So for everybody with a piece of that, really, really appreciate it. Mr. Gray's adequately, awesomely talked about the supply chain. What I loved the best, though, was airplanes are really just thousands of parts flying in formation. Sometimes it feels like that for us, right? Because we're using our aircraft to can off of, to take parts off of, to produce the airplanes that are coming out of the back end of our production machines. But we can only do that because of Mr. Gray and his team, our industry partners, and the program offices that are helping resource and understand how to do that. So from a supply perspective, we're following Mr. Gray's lead to be able to do that and push those jets out. I'm glad I get to end on workforce, and I started there a little bit. The challenges we have with the workforce are significant in the sense of our peer competitor is not sitting back watching. Think about People's Republic of China. It's 4 times bigger, which means they're producing 4 times the engineers, 4 times technology, 4 times skilled labor, right? Our workforce, in my view, many people's view, is the strategic advantage over our competitor, but they're closing the gap. This workforce is a national treasure, and we need to transform them in the years ahead, this workforce. So digital, right? The future is digital transformation, digital material management, the ability to connect our 20,000 pieces of industrial equipment and understand it and manage it. That takes a different kind of workforce. The workforce to be able to think about advanced manufacturing. Thank you to our 9 university partnerships, right? We mentioned Owati and other, Rose State right next door with Dr. Weber. Awesome partnership. We have 9 around the state. We also have partnerships with Votex. Absolutely critical that we create those skilled folks that can do some of the things to maintain the oldest old and the newest new. And then when we talk about being able to develop the next generation, I'm thankful the younger generation is picking up digital a lot faster than some of us older folks. But that's exactly what's needed to be able to do the industrial capabilities of the future. So thank you for you guys being here. Appreciate these teammates. We need to integrate and continue these dialogues, and really appreciate you supporting our airmen in all the ways you do and our great Air Force. Thank you.
Thank you, General Moore. And Colonel Rosetta, let's close out the formal piece of question and answers before we move on to the crowd here. So start thinking about your Q&A, and we'll get to that in a moment. But Colonel Rosetta, please give us an update on the Tinker Air Force Base economic impact.
Thanks, John. All right, so today I'm honored to roll out the numbers, right? We talk a lot about our impact. We are all here to support the warfighter, but let's be honest, we are also, as General Moore said, the largest single-site employer for the state of Oklahoma. In fact, our employees across Tinker come from 44 of the 77 counties across the great state of Oklahoma. Lots of people only think about the neighboring 6 to 8 counties, but 44 counties are represented by our amazing employees. So when we talk about economic impact, we have 2 categories. We have direct impact and indirect impact. Direct impact is truly the actual dollars spent on Tinker Air Force Base. Indirect impact are those dollars that we then spend in the community, if that makes sense. So that the total economic impact is the sum of the direct and the indirect dollars. So when we talk about direct, we have 27,400 employees who come through the gates every day. We actually have more people come through the gates every day at Tinker Air Force Base because we have an amazing retiree population of about 65,000 folks around the great state of Oklahoma and Tinker Air Force Base. But 27,400 employees come to work every day at Tinker. And for a direct impact, total annual expenditure of $3.48 billion last year. On the indirect side, we have helped create 26,166 jobs that have indirectly generated $3.2 billion. When you total those up, of direct and indirect, it's payroll, it's construction, it's locally produced and purchased goods and services. The grand total impact for last year is $6.69 billion for the state of Oklahoma. Oh, there you go. It's on the screen. So last year, so we're $218 million more than last year. We're 447 jobs more than last year. I will tell you, you heard we are growing. FY24 will be even bigger, especially when we look at the military construction projects happening on Tinker. So again, business is booming. We're excited to be part of Tinker. I really appreciate getting to serve with these leaders up here.
Thank you.
And I can't wait for your questions.
Thank you, Colonel Rosado. All right, so this is our open question and answer period. We have a couple officers that'll be going around. Please, if you would, just raise your hand, make an indication. We'll bring a mic over right here in the middle. And speak into the mic if you don't mind. Thank you.
This question is probably for General Moore, if you can answer it. Curious what the Air Force is doing to harden our assets against an EMP.
Against EMP. Well, I'll hit the first part, and I cannot answer the second part. But hardening is absolutely part of our Air Force, under great power competition. When you think about the threat that's increasing, hardening in all kinds of ways has to be a strategic import, right? So the threat growing, the pace of conflict and war is much faster, and the consequences, with today's technology can be much more severe. So I can tell you under great power competition from the Secretary on down, hardening of our facilities, of our capabilities, of our airmen, like Colonel Voigt talked about in training and competition. Hardening is absolute top priority. And, so our Secretary has operational imperatives that he's tracking, and within those operational imperatives, he's identified hardening. EMP specifically, I cannot address, and I'll leave it to anybody else if they want to take a stab. But I would suggest that there's probably a lot of planning going on for that too.
Thank you, sir. Additional questions here?
Colonel Voigt, with the future of the E3 and how we're having our aging fleet, although it's neat to hear that you're looking at redoing the actual dome and being able to refurbish those communication devices, tell us a little bit about the possibility of the future of the E7 and with that possibility coming to Tinker Air Force Base.
Yeah, so
if you could talk about that.
I'll talk what I can. I had the absolute fortune to go down to Australia in February. We sent 36 Americans to fly with the Royal Australian Air Force on their E7 program to help us learn what is that program like, how could we start training to be on that platform faster so that when it does arrive in the U.S. fleet, it will not take us long to build the syllabus, will not take us long to train our pilots, train our maintainers, and train our operators on in the back end to be able to do their job. And while I was there, I was able to actually get a sortie on the E7 and fly around Australia a little bit on the back of the Royal Australian Air Force E7. I will say the capability of the E7 is impressive. It is absolute. The sensor, the comm, the data links on that jet is unbelievably impressive. The reliability rate of a 737 by 707 is also very impressive. The ease of maintenance on a 737 by 707 is comparing apples to oranges. And then how we were able to, when we talk about propulsion, the engines on a 737 by the 707, we have much greater fuel efficiency, able to get much more endurance without having to have so many tankers to give us the gas that we need. So all over, the E7 is an impressive platform. No. Matt, we will always need you. But when you look at what we're doing in between, or will it come to Tinker, will it not come to Tinker, I don't know. The Secretary of the Air Force will make that decision on where the best place to station the E7 is. We are in constant communication with our Trilap platforms. So it's an interesting wrinkle. When we built the E3 platform, many nations bought the E3. But we did not combine our training. We did not combine our maintenance. We did not combine our tactics, techniques, and procedures. The Royal Air Force was flying the E3s. They flew the E3 Delta. The French flew and is still flying E3s with the E3 Foxtrot. NATO flew E3s and still flying it with the E3 Alpha. The Saudis flew the E3 with the E3 Sierra. And we fly the E3 Bravo, Charlie, and Gulf. None of those programs were combined. You could not go from the U.S. E3 to a Royal Air Force E3 without significant change in training. We're trying to look past that because the best part of how we go to combat is we go to combat with our alliance. We go to combat with our partners. And whether it be the Royal Australian Air Force or the Royal Air Force, and hopefully soon the Royal Canadian Air Force, if we can all have the same or similar system and we can share our operators, our maintainers, and our tactics, techniques, procedures, and training, that just makes us that much more dynamic, and it makes us that much harder to beat. So finding out how we can get our operators in Australia, or maybe have some British Australians go to the U.S. base, where the U.S. base will be, that's important to us. So right now, when I look forward to what does the E7 look like, I'm less concerned in when it's going to be here. That will be a decision that happens with industry and the Department of Defense. I'm more concerned with how fast can we train our operators to do the business they need as soon as it gets here. And then are we going to be compatible and integrate, and are we going to be able to integrate with our partners in the Trilap? And the Trilap being the Royal Air Force, the Royal Australian Air Force, and the United States Air Force. Hopefully that answered your question.
Great stuff. Thank you, sir. Additional questions? One in the middle here.
This question is for John Sneeden. Your position was recently elevated to a PEO. So what benefits or advantages are realized by that elevation? And can we see, or do we expect any changes in the way you do business?
So say that last part again?
Your PEO was your
No,
PEO.
yeah.
Do we expect any changes in the way you've done business?
Okay,
to
yeah,
previous?
gotcha. Yeah, thank you. So prior to the change, it was I was the director of propulsion, so we were already doing a lot of the hard work. But I will offer to you that a lot of the movement that we had was all predicated off of more relationship than it was authority, and it really made things a little bit harder. So it created inconsistencies in terms of how we managed the propulsion enterprise. So like I offered before, I think when they flipped the switch over to making it a PEO position, which is now in effect, then the first thing it did was it gave us specific programs that are managed and that are actually in our portfolio that we control the outcome of it. and report directly to SAF-AQ on. Some of those things are more technology maturation and risk reduction efforts, like on our new technology that we're working on. Other things are more mature, programs like the TF-33 that powers some of these systems that are up here today. Okay, so we've got more direct control on that. And then as we start taking a look at the systems that we have, then it creates an opportunity for us to have a more consolidated approach in the acquisition and sustainment strategies. So can we have a consistent approach in terms of buying like things? I'll give you an example. So today on the T108 system, which is what powers the C-130J, it also powers the Global Hawk and also the Osprey. We have 3 different contracts, all with the same OEM, to go drive essentially, a readiness outcome. There's slight variations in each of those propulsion systems, but what makes more sense is to have a consolidated type of an approach that optimizes the procurement activity for all the supply that we would need and optimizes an outcome for that, right? And also comes back and says, where should we do these engines overhauls? Should they be at the Rolls-Royce facility? Should they be here at the local depot? Should it be a combination of the two? So it's an opportunity for optimization activity like that. And then on the industrial base side, I mentioned this earlier as well, but on the industrial base side, there are more countries in this world that can make a nuclear weapon than can make an advanced propulsion system, okay? So it's a very small grouping, and it's a very delicate industrial base that we have to protect. So as we start to try to optimize these outcomes for, on the acquisition and sustainment side, we can do this with a focus of being able to protect the industrial base. And then finally, sending a demand signal, that goes from what the warfighter needs and goes all the way into the laboratory to say, this is the type of work that we need to do, this is the type of system we need to prove it on, and this is the outcome that we want. And being able to do that in a very proactive way is key. Right now, for us to develop a new propulsion system takes 10 to 15 years, okay? So by the time that the warfighter says, I need it, I can't have my response be, I'll see you in 10 to 15 years. My response needs to be, here, it's ready to go because we've been leaning into this for some time. Okay? So getting that demand signal right and working on that technology proactively is another key facet of what we can do as a program executive officer type of organization. But thank you for that question.
Thank you, sir. And we have time for maybe one more question. Is there one more over here? So do one more question and we'll wrap this up. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Edwina Butler Wolf, and I'm with the Sac and Fox Nation, and I work in the education department for our kids up in that rural area of Stroud, Oklahoma. And so I was wanting to know, those are very impressive numbers that you have given us today, and I was wondering, with those working with students out there in rural Oklahoma, I know in October or November, we brought a group of students up here to do the Indian Heritage Week with Captain Jonathan Weatherspoon at the AWACS. And so our students, it really opened up our students' eyes in that area. And I'd like to see more of that on Tinker Air Force Base. And my question is, how many tribes here in Oklahoma, if you have partnerships with any of the tribes, or if you don't, do you ever thought about doing that as in training wise and in employment for students like that? So,
Ma'am, I'll take that question. We do have relationships with the different tribal nations in the state. In fact, the team is working very hard. We're going to have an engagement July 12th, specifically with the tribal leaders. And I have made a commitment that for every tribal leader who cannot be there on July 12th, I will go drive to them. That's how strong my commitment is to our tribal nation leaders in this state. We also have, Captain Weatherspoon did a fantastic job in November. We are also working very, very hard to bring back a powwow in November. So we have a strategic calendar of events and engagements specifically to deliberately get after those relationships. So I look forward to talking to you more about that so we can partner together, because I'm so happy to hear that the students had a positive reaction to that event.
Thank you, ma'am. More questions? Sure. Are there additional questions? While we're thinking about that, just so we all know, I'll make a plug for community engagements as well. Please check out our website. tinker.af.mil is our website where we have a strategic calendar of different events that we do on the base. As one of our premier events that we're already planning right now is our next air show in 2025, June, the last week of June, June 28, 29, I believe, where we have the Air Force Thunderbirds this year. So please mark your calendars now, and we're looking for another record season, record air show. Any other questions here? Well, those were some great questions, sir. Do not fail. And 1 second while we grab the mic here for you.
Yes, Mike Klober. You talk about how the mission is, and we're all impressed with that. At least I am. I can't speak for the whole group here, but from the community, we definitely love a relationship with the base. And what I want to know, is there anything that the community can do in addition to what it's already doing to support the mission of the base? And it could be something long-term, could be something short-term. So.
Mike? I want to make sure I get your question correctly, but what can the community do? What should the community do to help us? So I'll give you two things that I always, when I talk publicly, I always remind people. The Air Force is a great place to come and work. All right? Fundamentally, I will tell you at its very core, you are looking at an organization that is one filled with great Americans that believe in being part of something bigger than themselves, that embrace their communities, their mission, their values, and have fundamentally changed a lot of people, right? And you heard me say in my introduction, when I got in the Air Force, a very different person, right? And you can debate how great of a person I am now, right? I'm good with that, right? The value of being in military service in any capacity. And I've done just about all of them. I enlisted, I was an officer, I'm a civilian, I worked as a defense contractor, and there's some way to serve out there that will fit the lifestyle that you want to have. And I think we need to bring that message to our communities and our young people, because I think folks, I don't want to say they have a bad impression of the military, but they just don't understand the value of service. So that's one thing I would ask you. Talk about the Air Force, talk about the value of service and how it can be a great opportunity. Not only to help grow people, but look, I took advantage of every program the Air Force was willing to give me. I had tuition assistance to get my degree. I went to AFIT. I went to every PME possible out there. I went to every enlisted one and most of the officer one. So I've got more of that than anything else. And it was there for free, for me, right? It fundamentally changed the way I think. So second thing I think is continue to reach out and ask the question, even on a small scale. I mean, we do so many engagements like this, or things like Tinker into Primes, or just, outreach with high schools or things like that. But take the opportunity to keep asking the question of what does the base need? How can the community help? It could be a very small thing like trying to help a family that just got hammered by the tornadoes that came through not too long ago, or on a much larger scale, is there a way, I mean, you guys, the Koblers, are great examples of people that do things for the base, just because. So keep that dialogue going, and I certainly think that will help us down the road.
So we're going to pile on a little bit, Colonel Rusetta and I, because it's a great question, Mr. Klober. Thank you for bringing that up. And for those who don't know, Pam and Mike Klober have taken special interest in the base and Home Away from Home, an organization that they sponsor and run. And they help our airmen tremendously. I'll pile on to what Mr. Gray said, and that is, you being here today, understanding what we do, you're now a recruiter. I hope every one of you is a recruiter, right? Just by simply understanding. There's so many communities, I grew up in one, without any military presence around our country. So the fact that you understand us, you can now speak from 8 lenses, if not many more, is really, really important. So we really appreciate that, understanding this capability, and then, of course, being able to serve with those folks that you know, we need everybody to serve, as Mr. Gray said. So thanks for advocating and influencing to keep our operations running.
Thanks, sir. So I'll just sort of finish out the question, unless someone on that side of the table wants it. Okay, copy, doing great. I learned early in my Air Force career, you can't surge trust, right? So it's really important to build that trusting relationship, because I don't know when I'm going to pick up the phone and need help. I do think there's going to be a time I'm going to pick up the phone and need help. So forums like this allow us to continue to build trust, to continue to collaborate, to continue to say, hey, we are your partner, you are our partner, and I am confident that if any of the 8 leaders on this table say, I need help, we're going to call. So I just really appreciate opportunities to be able to continue to build and deepen relationships, because when we need to surge trust, we need the trust to be there already. So I would say, Mike, to answer your question, we just need to continue to deepen our relationship, because I do believe there will be a time we are going to pick up the phone and say, I need some help. So thank you, everybody, so much for being here today.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, that will conclude our question and answer period. Thank you all for those great questions. Colonel Rusetta, you already started to speak for your closing remarks, but would you like to provide any additional comments for the group?
I'll just say, you all took time out of your day, a large chunk out of your day today, to be here, and I really, really appreciate it. It means a lot to all of us to look out this audience and say, thanks for being here, thanks for taking the time. You've heard it across all 8 of us. It takes the whole community to keep this Tinker mission growing, and I learned a term last week, extreme teaming. It is called extreme teaming, and we are part of the extreme teaming. And I would just say we are stronger together because of this organization. So thank you. And also a big shout out to the PA team. A ton of people made this happen today. So John, to your team, there's ALC team members, there's 507th team members. A lot of people pulled today together. And so thanks to the team for making it happen.
Thank you, Colonel Rusetta. And that will conclude our afternoon program. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, commanders. Once again, a round of applause for our commanders here. Until next time, we plan to do this again next year. So please drive safe, have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you again.